Alright, it's Monday, everybody. What's going on? This is basically me shooting a vlog on the day of actually having to post one because I didn't do anything on the weekend. Snickle, keep scratching. I didn't shoot anything on the weekend because I was like having too much fun and doing too many things and I had no time to like pick up my camera and vlog. So today I woke up and I was like, I don't have a vlog. I don't have a video to post. So I thought I would just talk about jobs that I've had. I didn't really want to make this a top 5 because I didn't know if I should make it the top 5 worst jobs I've ever had or the top 5 best jobs I've ever had. But there's no way I could come up with 5 best jobs I've ever had because pretty much every job I've ever had was terrible except for this job and working in television. I don't know how old I was, but I had a paper route and I delivered papers for a long time. Probably for too long. I delivered them even in high school. It's the worst job ever because you get paid per flyer that you insert into the newspaper. So every weekend you'd get a huge stack of newspapers delivered and all the flyers, and you'd have to sit like in an assembly line formation in the basement and like insert all the flyers and then take a cart outside and go deliver all of the papers to the neighborhood. And then you'd see like the cool guy in the neighborhood and you'd be like, I'm delivering papers, and it was like so lame, and you get paid nothing. You get paid like cents per flyer. So I never recommend getting a paper route if you happen to be very young and watching this. I started babysitting around the same time as well. Babysitting was interesting. It's funny because I don't really like kids and I definitely wouldn't want to babysit now as like an adult, and I can't believe that at like 14, 15, 16, I was babysitting like infants because that's crazy. I was basically an infant. But I went to a babysitting course and I learned first aid and CPR, which I don't remember now. But I got certified and like told that I could be a babysitter. And then I found some people in the neighborhood and I babysat for one family quite regularly. One summer I babysat this girl pretty much every day in the summer. That wasn't really a fun job. And it's just a weird role. Like being a babysitter is a weird role to assume. I was babysitting like a baby at one point, which I think is crazy. And this one time, this kid got sick while I was babysitting him. So he had a little baby brother, and then he was like a toddler, and he was just playing on the floor like with his toys, whatever. And then all of a sudden he's just standing there, and he's like, I'm like, what's wrong? And he's just standing there. And then all of a sudden, projectile vomit, like all over the floor. And then he lost it. Then he was just crying and freaking out, and I couldn't stop him from crying. And I was like trying to clean up the vomit, but he was just like in the middle of the floor. And I had to call his dad and get him to come home from work because I couldn't handle it. It was too much. And I'm not even kidding. The vomit was like actually like flying out like exorcism, like projectile. That's not a good experience. Like, what kind of job experience is that anyways? It's preparing you to what? Be a mother? It's like so stupid. Don't babysit. It's not a good option. I think there are so many other things you could do. I think back when I was like a teenager, there was only so many things you could do as a job, and like most of the time people didn't take you seriously. But I feel like now like you could go get a hostessing job at a restaurant. I don't know, I felt like that was never an option for me. And then after babysitting a newspaper, I worked at Shoppers Drug Mart, which you may have heard me talk about in the top 5 things you probably don't know about me. Good 4 years or so, I worked at Shoppers Drug Mart, became a supervisor, like a cashier supervisor, knew everything about the store. It wasn't a bad job. That was actually a pretty good job. I worked with really cool people. It's not like I wanted to go to work. It wasn't like I was like, yay, I'm going to Shoppers. It was just like, I have a job and now I have money and now I can buy clothes that I want. So that was like my first real job, I feel like. Yeah, so then in college, what did I do in college? I like applied to work at American Eagle for like one day. I worked there for like not even a day. I applied, I went for the group interview, all this crap. Then I got a discount to go buy clothes because I had to wear clothing from American Eagle if I was going to work there at the mall, at the Oshawa Center, the OC, because I went to school in Durham, at Durham College. And then I went and bought all my clothes, and then I didn't even show up for the first day of work. I was like, I'm quitting, and I didn't even start, and then I kept the clothes. You know why? Because I just felt, I was like, oh, what am I doing? Like going to work at American Eagle, like this is not my scene. And I knew I was gonna hate it, and I just knew I had to quit before I'd even got started. Then I ended up working at Deja Vu Discs in Oshawa. It was a really cool job, actually. It was a used CD store, so I got to like go through people's CDs and decide which ones we would buy, and like I worked at a music store, so it was super fun. I got to play whatever music I wanted. I worked with this girl Christina and this guy Tim, and we like shared music, and it was just like super cool, super fun. Like they were totally like record store people, and that was probably my favorite job, like as a part-time job. I also worked at Chapters while I was in college at the Oshawa Center, the OC, and I worked in the music section. Remember they launched the music section at Chapters like a long time ago? I was like, worked in that department, and that was kind of fun. But then I went to Deja Vu Discs after that because I was like, the Chapters music department is lame. I want to work at a real music store. So I did that, and I think that's all the jobs I had in college. Then I basically had to do like co-op in college, and I worked at Mint Records for like a few months. Mint Records represents like Canadian bands like at the time the Weaker Thans, Nardwar's band, the Evaporators, stuff like that. It's kind of like a West Coast based record label, indie label, but there was a PR person out in Toronto named Yvette, and she worked out of her home. So I would like show up to her home every day. It was like super weird to like work out of somebody's house. That was like if I brought in an intern, I think it would be weird working out of someone's home. So I did that as like my co-op placement because listen to this. I applied to work at Fat Records. It was like a punk rock label. And I had an interview with the woman that ran Fat Records at the time for my co-op placement. And I'm in a music industry business program. And she told my professor that she was weary about hiring women because they were like groupies. And she was worried that I would be like a groupie and like hit on her artist or like something like that. And that is like the biggest insult to me of all time because I am the furthest thing from a groupie, and I never wanted to be looked at that way. I was just like a fan, and I wanted to be around music, and I never like tried to get with like dudes in bands. Like I was just like a nerd that like wanted to meet them and get a picture. But anyway, so she was like totally sexist. So she didn't hire me even though I was more than qualified. So that's why I went to go work at Mint Records, and this lasted like a few months, and then I ended up going to work, actually get paid for the rest of my co-op placement at Ride for Sight, which was a non-for-profit place where I became the event coordinator under the event manager. And the only reason I got that job is because the event manager at Ride for Sight, the charity, she put on events all across Canada. She used to work at Sony Music. When I was in high school, I did an internship co-op placement in grade 12 at Sony Music Canada, and she was the manager there, the marketing manager I worked with, and she left Sony and ended up working for this Ride for Sight place, which was like a motorcycle charity that raised money for the Foundation Fighting Blindness for retina pigmentosa, which is why I know all this stuff about blindness and RP, which I mentioned in my other video last week. But so she was like wanted to hire me because she really liked me, so I went to go work for her, and I actually got paid for the rest of my co-op placement in college. And then I worked there all summer, and I worked there for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then that was like the first real like salary job that I ever had. I like helped her put on events all across Canada. We traveled a bit. I like got really into like motorcycle culture because it was all bikers that like that were like part of the volunteer group and everything. And at the time I thought I wanted to get like a motorcycle license, which I think that was just because I was surrounded by it, which now that I think about it, it's like crazy. I would never do that. It's so dangerous. And then I got recruited by the company that printed our flyers and posters for Ride for Sight. They called me anonymously and they were like, hey, and they like tried to recruit me to work for them as a salesperson, which I ended up doing. And my old boss was so mad that I left Ride for Sight to go work for this printing company because they were like, it was like complete conflict of interest where like they're our client or we're their client, and then they like recruited me, and they were like really weird. These people were the most memorable people I've ever worked for because they're all crazy and whatever. I don't even care if they watch this. They know they're crazy. Basically I worked at this sales company, and I was like a little punk ass kid with like spiky hair. I had a lip ring. I did not look like a salesperson, and they hooked me up with a company car. The head office was in Montreal, so I had to go to Montreal for like a week and like train and like learn about printing. And I'm talking like commercial printing, like printing presses. So we printed like posters and flyers, and they also were like one of the first form printers. You know those forms that have like the dot matrix things, like they have those like pieces of paper you tear off the side, like the rotary forms? They were one of the first companies to print rotary forms. So I know how to like design and make rotary forms. which is crazy. So I learned how to do all that, and I became a salesperson at this company. And like the owner of the company, he was like this like business guy, like always wore a suit. It was like really like kind of weird, like sociopath maybe. And he had all women that worked for him. It was all women. It was like such an old-fashioned company. It was hilarious. He was like maybe kind of chauvinistic. He was like pretty much nice and like nice to me, but I could tell it was like in a fatherly way. This was like the weirdest job I've ever had. I think like I like had an out-of-body experience and like went to a different dimension and worked in this job, because it definitely, when I think back to it, is so bizarre. And the stuff that happened at that place and the way people acted was so weird. And everyone was really superficial, and they were like, they drove Porsches, and like I had like a Mini Cooper, like I had a company car that they got me, and I think they were just trying to like impress me with like their money and their flashiness. How long did I work there for? Like 2 years, maybe 3 years. And then I was at the time like really wanted to work in television, and I didn't know how I was gonna get out of this weird job. And I saw the posting for the show in Vancouver, and I sent in a demo tape, and then I got a call, and I had to like lie to this company that I was going to a funeral so that I could go audition to be on this television show in Vancouver. So I was working in sales at this weirdo job. I had like all these accounts. I was actually a pretty good salesperson, even though I was like alternative and like not like the people I worked with, so they thought I was weird, and they were trying to like groom me and make me like them, and I was always like, no, like I'm gonna do this the way I want to do it. It was the weirdest job. So then I lied to them, said I had to go to a funeral, but really I was going up to Vancouver to audition to be on this TV show, and then I got the job, and then I quit, and they were just like, what are you going to do? And I told them that I was going to, I kind of lied about my job, but I was like, I'm going to work at Much Music in Toronto. Like I just lied and said that. And I realized they would never see me on TV. They'd never see what I was doing. So I just kind of lied, because they were just like, okay, so you're gonna go work in television now? Okay, we just wasted 2.5 years of our time, money, and resources on this person who we thought we could groom to be like the next best salesperson to like save our dying company. And then I just like pick up and left and like went to go work in TV. It was so awkward and so weird. That job was brutal. I had so much like anxiety all the time. Like it was the most stressful time of my life just thinking about it, because every day it was like, I had to like put on a facade, and I had to like act weird, and like, oh, it was the worst. It was like when people talk about like how you're not your authentic self, like how you're not speaking your truth or anything like that. That's what I was doing at that time. I was just like I was completely full of it. But I was making a lot of money. I like made really good money. And if I had stayed in sales probably one more year, I'd be making over 6 figures. But like it was the worst job ever. The thing that I had the most fun doing was like going on sales calls and like being on the road, where I didn't have to deal with the people at the company, and I could just go deal with my clients, like my customers, and like was just on a cell phone, and like didn't even have a laptop. Like at that time there was no such thing as laptops, or like they weren't like popular, and they made us like have to come back to the office to like use our desktop computer, because they were so like controlling, and they needed to know what you were doing all the time, even though you're just supposed to be like a salesperson that like is out doing their own thing, making their own sales. Ugh. So then I got that job in Vancouver, worked in television, and you guys pretty much know the rest. So those are all the jobs that I had leading up to working in television, except then when I got laid off from television in 2008, so I worked in Vancouver, worked for Much Music on Going Coastal, the show Going Coastal. I got laid off in 2008 because the recession happened. So I moved back to Toronto, and I lived at home for a little bit. And for about 1.5 years, I wasn't getting any TV calls or anything like that. And I was kind of doing some stuff online with some companies, but I also had to wait tables, and I worked at like 4 or 5 different restaurants, and I would like work there for 4 weeks, and then I would quit because I wasn't getting any tables or making any money. I worked at Shoeless Joe's for a little bit. I worked at this restaurant called Jules Bistro at Richmond and Spadina, which is the worst place ever, and the owner is a psychopath. And I worked at the Rogers Center restaurant that's connected to where you look at the baseball game, like through the windows. It was like part of the hotel there. That was weird, like working for a hotel, because it's like unionized, and like I had to wear a weird outfit and like a white collared shirt and an apron, and I felt like so stiff and weird. I was like, I gotta get out of here. And then that's when I went to go work at Shoeless Joe's, which was also awful. And there was this like bartender that worked at Shoeless Joe's who was like a raging bitch. And once she like yelled at me for no reason, and I almost started crying at work, I was just like asking her to make my drinks and she like lost it on me. People get there's so much drama in the restaurant world, like in the bar scene, and I hate it. It's the worst. And if you work at bars and restaurants, you know what I'm talking about. It's just not my thing at all. Like hanging out with everybody after and like, it's so brutal. And I was just like, just get me out of here. Like, did I even make any tips? And I'm also the worst server of all time. I forget everything. If you ask me for ketchup, you ask me for another drink, I like forget it. I think it's the hardest job ever. I think waiting tables is actually one of the hardest things to do. And I like still sometimes have like serving nightmares when I'm like sleeping and I like, you wake up thinking, oh my God, I forgot your drink. Like I still have those nightmares. It's brutal. It's like traumatized me. All those jobs that I had before I like worked in television have traumatized me deeply. So thanks for watching. Wednesday's gonna be what I ate in a day and Friday is hashtag Ask Lauren. Make sure you leave comments below. Ask me questions for Ask Lauren. Use the hashtag Ask Lauren so I can search the comments and find them. And I'll see you guys Wednesday. You can watch me eat some food. Okay, bye.